And welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. Oregon had a bye week last week, so there's no game to review, but we'll set the table for Oregon versus UCLA. Dan Rubenstein will join us. We'll kind of take a look at the state of the Big Ten. Is it as top-heavy as we thought it was going to be? Then we'll also discuss clearly what Oregon needs to do a little bit better in this game against the Bruins. But let's go ahead and introduce the rest of the crew. We've got Joey Harrington, Anthony Newman, and Aaron Fentress. And guys, I got to ask you, what do you do? Now, let's start with you, Joey. On a Saturday where there's no Oregon football, do you still find yourself sitting down watching games, or is that kind of like a big family weekend? What do you do with that free time now?
Well, I mean, as we've talked about, my secondary focus is Oregon football. My primary focus is child taxi soccer driver. So my weekend always is fixated around where we're going. So this weekend, of course, you always start with the 7 a.m. Wrexham match on Saturday. And then Man U played Crystal Palace at 9:30. And then it was Michigan SC at noon. And then we had our first youth match at 1:30. To then flip it around, we had a high school match in West Albany. So then it was a 5 o'clock in West Albany, which coincided, the Xfinity stream, right? You can watch it, because I watched the Tennessee Oklahoma on my phone, only to come back then and watch the Timbers on the drive back home. I wasn't watching because I was driving, but you know how that works. So,
okay, I was about to say, not a good idea usually to be watching and driving. I know you're a soccer purist because you call them matches, not games, like us Yankees here for the most part. And so, nice little weekend, Joey. Aaron, what about you? Do you find something to still be critical about Oregon with, even though they're not playing that weekend? Do you hate watch anybody? What do you do?
Yes, Joey. I sit there on the couch and I'm like, Oregon's not better than that team. Oh, that team would crush Oregon, man. Oh, the Ducks want nothing to do with that team. No, actually, I took my daughter back to school. She's a sophomore at Oregon. So all my haters out there who are Duck fans, you can take solace in the fact that I'm forking over cash left and right to the Oregon Ducks because my daughter was going to school there. So, you got me. You're in my pockets. So actually, we took her Thursday, but then I had to go back and do some more shopping and help her set up some things. And so I'm walking around like stores, like looking at my phone, trying to watch SC Michigan and different games. She's like, Dad, pay attention to what we're doing. So that was my weekend on Saturday. But on a normal circumstance, I just sit back and just enjoy the games and try to look at the top teams that Oregon has to compete with down the line. And in doing so this week, I saw a lot of challenges ahead for the Duckies.
Does your daughter use a fake last name down in Eugene just for protection from scrutiny?
How'd you know? I can't give it up, but how'd you know?
I had a feeling. I was like, the first name looked familiar. Who is this?
Schmentress. That sounds a lot
Anthony,
like
listen, you've always got a lot going on.
Yeah.
You're probably getting set to collect state championship ring number 5, it feels like. And what does your Saturday look like with no Oregon football? Because you're usually a little bit busier on those Oregon football game days than us.
Yes, Joey, I've been there, okay, taking kids to soccer and football. And Aaron, I've been there. My kids now graduated from college, so I'm the old guy on the set. But I'm still coaching high school football. So what we had to do, since there was no Duck game, I went to some Westland youth football games. And we have to represent, because everybody's trying to recruit our kids. Everybody's trying to take our kids because we got so many studs at Westland. So we have to show up as coaches to represent, to talk to the kids, say hi to the kids.
Projection.
What?
Because Westland doesn't recruit, right?
No. But we're not Central Catholic, Joey. At Central Catholic, you can do that. You can go to other schools and recruit. But we got to self-recruit at Westland. So I was watching youth football, had a great time. Each team won by maybe 40. So we're good.
Cool. Thanks for asking me, by the way. You guys, forget you. Let's get to all the games that we had, because I know we all caught a lot of stuff. All top 10 ranked teams were in action. They all won for the most part, but there were some pretty intriguing games as far as what it means to the Big Ten. We saw USC and Michigan play against each other. Illinois, Nebraska, all of a sudden Illinois finds themselves in the top 20. And we'll kind of look at the Big Ten pecking order. But overall in the world of college football, I guess watching these games, guys, do you feel better about the way Oregon has started the season now that you've seen some teams play? Or do you still feel like the Ducks are looking a little bit shakier than what we thought after kind of watching the whole landscape? And Aaron, let's begin with you, because I know you've been keeping your finger on this.
Well, I feel like more of the top teams are winning by bigger numbers than Oregon did, especially in their first 2 games. So, I mean, I do feel like Oregon's a little bit behind. But again, and we talk about that, knowing that it's early in the season, you fix things, you move forward. No one on this show has said, especially me, that the Ducks are done and they can't win the conference and they won't do blah, blah, blah. But they haven't been as impressive as some other teams that have been able to put up bigger numbers against weaker competition than Oregon has, other than the Oregon State game. So I think that's out there. So if we're talking about, where they sit after the first 3 weeks in terms of being in national contention, I think they're down the list a little bit. I think they're playoff worthy for sure. I don't think that's really much of a concern unless they stumble in a couple areas we don't expect them to. But do I see them as a national championship contender in comparison to the Texases of the world and even Miami, Penn State, et cetera? No, I don't.
And Joey, how about you? I mean, you're watching USC and Michigan, and we'll get to kind of the Big Ten breakdown later. But, how do you feel about Oregon overall in the national scene?
I don't care. I mean, I don't.
Next segment.
All right, and going on to Anthony real quick.
But I mean, so here's we've established from day one that it doesn't matter what everybody, to Aaron's point, it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing, right? Everybody else does their things. You're not playing everybody else. Right now, Oregon is just essentially has been playing themselves, right? How do you make yourself better? How do you fix the things that you need to fix in order to get into that conversation? It truly, I don't know, I don't want to say I'm bothered by all the panic and, oh my God, Oregon's not as good as the number 3 ranking they had at the beginning of the season, and they're not going to be a top. Just take a deep breath. Do they have things to work on from last week? Sure. Did they look better last week? Not by, than they did against Boise State? Yeah. And if you continue to do that, then you will be in contention at the end of the year. If you don't, then you won't. So I don't know. I say I don't care because I come from the Jimmy Radcliffe school of thought, which is just who cares what everybody else is doing? Do your job. Do your job. Do it well. Do it to the best of your ability. Do everything you possibly can to optimize yourself. And by doing that, you will have the best opportunity to achieve the results that you want. If you don't, you won't. Seems pretty simple to me. I don't know.
Here's a point too. Washington last year, the narrative on Washington was they were winning, but they kept winning barely, right? They kept having these close games against.
I know somebody who kept winning barely.
Meanwhile, the Ducks were just blasting everybody, right? And so going into the Pac-12 title game, I think the Ducks were favored by 9 or 10 because of the margin of those scores, even though Washington had defeated Oregon. And then what happened in the Pac-12 title game? You could tell by mid-second quarter, it was okay, yeah, all those other games and all those other scores those two teams have participated in were absolutely worthless because Washington played better against the better teams than they did against the lesser teams. And so, yeah, basically, we just have to talk about something. So we're going to evaluate it as it sits now. And as it sits now, Oregon's good and they could become great. But I would say right now they're not national title contenders. But then at the same time, I just threw Penn State out there. But they struggled with Bowling Green. So is that fair? I don't know. But it'll all work itself out. That's the best part about it, right?
Can we get a transcript, like a digital transcript of that sentence that Fentress just had? Because they could have Penn State and we could have this, and we're just talking about we're throwing stuff out there, and I don't know, and it's just there's no period in that quote.
I don't deal with parents.
Anthony, you got anything else to add to that rambling?
Hey, I did catch a game. It was it was a good game at first. Tennessee, Oklahoma. And the reason why, there's a couple of reasons. One, my family's from Oklahoma, so they always talk about Oklahoma and the Sooners. Yeah, right. And then Dillon Gabriel, his old school. And so, hey, Oklahoma, welcome to the SEC. That's all I can say. And you got your hands full.
Yeah, that, and then of course Colorado with some late game miracles as always. And listen, Washington State, a dark horse for the playoff after they get that win over San Jose State. The rest of their road looks obviously games they're favored in. So a lot more stuff to sort out. When we come back though, we're going to talk more specifically about the Big Ten. Where does Oregon stand? Does Michigan look as good as they did? All of a sudden Illinois is a top 20 team. A lot to get to when we come back on Talkin Ducks. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks, and the latest AP poll has come out, and as you can see, the Big Ten has 6 teams in the top 20, 5 teams in the top 15, Oregon one of 3 schools in the top 10, and right now Ohio State is the highest ranked team in the conference. We've seen a lot of these teams play, obviously. Michigan, USC was the highlight of the Big Ten schedule last week, but let's start with you here, Joey, because coming into the season, many people thought it was Oregon, Ohio State. Michigan was a team you could maybe throw in there. They couldn't throw anything against USC, yet still got the victory. The Trojans didn't look as tough as we thought they did after that victory against LSU. So the question is, now that we've seen a larger sample size of the Big Ten, how do you like the way that Oregon's slating in there? And I know that requires some future casting, which you absolutely hate, but how do you feel like Oregon is stacked up against the competition in the Big Ten thus far?
Well, I don't know that my opinion really changes from what we talked about, really last year once we found out about Oregon going to the Big Ten. I am still, and maybe I'm off base in this, I'm still of the belief that it's not that big of a difference from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, right? Of course, you're going to have your Michigan, Ohio State at the top. You're going to add Oregon up at the top. Penn State has been in the mix. Wisconsin is a notch below. But you're not going to be playing all of those teams every year, right? So all Oregon's really doing is maybe adding one more big game a year, right? You're going to instead of playing SC and Washington, this year they're going to play, Washington and Michigan and Ohio State, right? So you're going to add one more game. The rest of them, the Illinois, the Nebraskas, whoever it is really no different than the Stanfords that rise and fall, than the Washington States that rise and fall, the Arizonas that, both of these conferences are filled with teams that kind of sit around that, you've got your top couple, and then you've got a few teams that will rise and fall depending on the year. That's what's happening with Illinois and Nebraska right now. Dylan Raiola is doing a wonderful job at quarterback as a freshman. Illinois is doing a great job, knocking them off this weekend. So I think you're always gonna have a few of those games, no matter what conference you're in. But I don't know. I don't look at it I don't see anything new that has truly changed my mind as of yet. It still could, but I still think they stack up right about where I thought they probably would at the beginning.
And Anthony, the question some people have too is Oregon built for the Big Ten? You have to have these big lines, and teams in this conference are going to be running the ball and grinding it out a la some of those big Stanford teams that were really a thorn in Oregon's side. Are you getting that glimpse from the games you've been watching, or is it a little bit more balanced in the Big Ten? And does Oregon have to be so concerned about matching that play style, or can the Ducks play the way that they play and find success?
Yeah, the Ducks can play the way that they play and have success. I mean, a lot of these recruits nowadays are coming from the East Coast. They would normally stay in Michigan or Ohio State. Well, they're coming out to Oregon. So we got their guys. We're using their guys to beat them. I mean, it's that simple. When you look at, the style of play of Big Ten, you talk about the Iowas, they run the football, they pound the ball. But when you play a team that's had that spread offense that can throw the ball all over the place and score points, then that type of offense that you just run the ball, it's the power running game, you better score points, you better control the clock, and you better have a good defense, which they do. When I look at the Big Ten, I think defense. I think Ohio State, Michigan, now you talk about Oregon, maybe you talk about Washington, teams that have defense, that will win a conference championship. The offense, give or take, when you have explosive players, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, you got Dillon Gabriel, Terrence Ferguson. When you have a bunch of explosive players, as the defense, boy, that hurts the defense. It makes you think about who do we need to stop, okay? What do we need to stop, okay? And we need to get off the field.
And how are we going to stop it? Can I follow up? Can I follow up what Anthony said? So,
yeah,
Dan Lanning comes to Oregon, and the first game on his schedule is Georgia, the team he had just won the national championship with, right? He discovered when he got to Oregon that despite the recruiting classes under Mario, the talent wasn't necessarily there to compete at that level. So almost immediately, Dan Lanning began reconstructing the roster in order to match up with the SEC and the Big Ten, because that was the pathway to success. And that's why the roster got flipped upside down the first couple years, right? I think one year they had 45 changes or something like that. So he's building this team, or been building this program, to be able to handle life against those teams. And the dudes they've recruited are talented and massive, right? They're not running around with the 6 foot, 295 pound offensive lineman, right? They're getting the 320, 330 bigger dudes to be able to contend at that level. So I do believe that, he's the perfect guy really to have hired in that switch, because he lived in that arena, in that vicinity of the country, and coached against those mutants. Let's call them what they are. They're just freaks of nature. And so, yeah, I do believe Oregon is either there physically or building toward being able to survive in the trenches at that level. However, you still have to do it repeatedly against a lot of like-minded teams, whereas in the Pac, you didn't really have that. And history showed that when you didn't have that, the Stanfords could rise up and trip you up, even though you had the best offense in the country, right? So I do believe they're building toward that. I don't know if they're going to be there this year, but I do think Dan Lanning is the guy to make sure that if you're going to lose and fail, it's not going to be because you don't have the talent and the size and the strength in the trenches.
All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at what Oregon needs to do against UCLA as far as Oregon themselves. Is this another prove-it game? What have the Ducks worked on during the bye week? We'll let you know when we come back on Talkin Ducks.
UCLA has had some struggles in the first couple of weeks, both offensively and defensively. What have you seen on film to where you can think you can take advantage of them in this weekend's matchup?
I don't know if I'll speak to that more than just speaking to a team that I think has been resilient. Is going into halftime, a tie game with LSU. They've been able to play in some tight battles and showing an ability to play with any team that they line up against. So certainly they've had areas where they can grow, and so have we. So I see it as a great challenge. A team that has some talent on their roster, some guys that play really well that we have to be aware of and ready to adapt to.
Welcome back. Time now for our Road to Victory, brought to you by Guarantee Chevrolet, and Oregon getting set to take on UCLA this upcoming week. And obviously the Bruins, they're underneath a new coaching change here, Anthony, and this is a team that's been a bit of a disappointment to start this year. A 3-point victory on the road at Hawaii to start the year. They get beat at home to Indiana, and then they lose on the road to LSU, and they put up a fight for the first half for the most part, but Anthony, this is a team that can't run the ball, doesn't have great line play, and this feels like another prove-it game for Oregon, or just your thoughts on Oregon going to take on UCLA as 3-score favorites here?
Well, that's why you play the games, because you never know. I mean, we were talking about Idaho. Oh, this is going to be a blowout. And then Oregon had to fight to win. I'm going to sound like a coach here. It's not about UCLA. It's about us. That's what the coach is saying. That's what Dan Lanning's saying. It's about what we do on the field. Don't beat ourselves. It's hard enough to beat your opponent, but don't give up penalties. Don't make stupid mistakes. Know your assignments. That is really important. And then you're coming off a bye week. Sometimes when you come off that bye week, you're a little rusty in that first half. And then you give the opponent hope. And once UCLA has hope at their house, now I know their stadium is not a factor with the crowd noise, nothing like that, but still, they're at home. They've been getting beat. They've been having struggles. They're trying to find themselves right now. It's now, this is the time when Oregon needs to jump on a team early, like UCLA, and don't look back. Don't give them any hope or anything, any light to thinking, hey, we can hang with this football team.
Yeah, Joey, we see this time and time again during the season where coaches say, this game is more about us. It's less about them. And if it is more about Oregon, what does Oregon need to show more of against UCLA when they had their most impressive performance of the season against Oregon State prior to this bye week?
They need to show more of the second half against Oregon State. I mean, that was the best half of football they've played. I mean, the things they did well on offense, they protected. They moved the launch point for Dillon Gabriel. They worked the mid-range passing game, which then opened up the running game. I mean, and then defensively, they shut Oregon State's running game down in that second half. Look, it's not you said, what do they need to do? Like, it's not a magic formula. That defensive line, Oregon's defensive line, which, has stars coming out all, how many high school recruiting stars they got. I mean, they got a preseason, Jordan, Birch was a preseason All-American. Like, they have talent. They need to play. They just need to cut loose and play defensively. Offensively, they just need to keep doing what they did in the second half against Oregon State. Like, the fixes are there. They're obvious. They just need to continue to do them.
And Aaron, it really feels like they might have found something with fewer substitutions on that offensive line against Oregon State. Now you're going on the road. This is really, another road test that you're going to be facing here. What does Oregon need to show you? Because it feels like consistency is going to be the biggest
100-0, Jordan. 100-0. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, go ahead. Does this need to be a first to fourth quarter dominant performance?
Yes. There you go. So, all right. When you're covering and following and talking about a top 10 team and they're playing bottom 30 teams, we're going to nitpick things to death, all right? That's what we do. So the one thing they haven't done yet is just blast someone out the gate, right? Last week it was 22-14. Now, I never felt for a second that Oregon State was going to actually win, but still it was 22-14, and that was coming off of 2 mediocre performances in the first 8 quarters of the season, right? So through 10 quarters, they looked pretty ordinary. Then they blew the doors off of Oregon State. I want to see them go down and play a UCLA team that not only can't run the football, 2.7 yards per carry, but their third down conversion rate is 33%, which means you should be able to get them off the field all day long. It shouldn't even be an issue. Now, they did play well at LSU, for a bit. But still, if I have to nitpick something, I want to see them blow the doors off, lead 28-7 at half, win 56-22 going away. I want to see Dante Moore actually throw some passes downfield, get a lot of time in there, and maybe throw a touchdown or score a touchdown. How about that? That's what I want to see. I want to see the game where the backup quarterback gets in there and puts up 50, 60 yards of total offense and a touchdown. That's what I want.
Against his former team, nonetheless.
There you go. See? Help him out. Help Dante Moore get some revenge on his homies.
Last question for you, Anthony. During a bye week, what is Oregon doing during this time? I mean, you've coached at so many levels and you've seen it. It feels like there's so much emphasis on making sure you go out there, and now that you have that game plan, you're playing great assignment football. And I know that's coach talk for the most part, but it's guys being able to concentrate and not having to go out there and think, but rather react because it's so instinctual.
Well, yeah. I mean, some of the mistakes that they're making, they have to fix those mistakes, and that's what you focus on. First you got to get healthy. You got to heal up. You got to take time, even though it's early in the season. You still have to get in the treatment room and get some ice or stim or whatever you need to do to get healthy, to get on the field. And then the mistakes that you made. That's what you're going to practice against. That's what you're going to do, because other teams see those mistakes and they're going to do the same thing. They're stupid if they're not. They're going to test you. So you need to make sure you shore those up and understand that, hey, this was my mistake. It's boot action. I bit on the boot. All of a sudden the tight end's running across the field scot-free. You can't have that. It's bad eyes. So those things you have to work on to be better. And then you'll get a game like Aaron was talking about, 52-20, because he's right. It should be. You have too many dudes on this football team. But the other team, they know how to play the game as well. They have coaches who know how to coach as well. Sometimes those games are a little closer than you want them.
All right, guys, I don't see any hands up. So sorry. Joey has a question before class is dismissed. Joey, go ahead.
Not a question, 2 statements. One, Anthony just called UCLA stupid. And 2, we all know that he went to like Aruba during his bye week. So, I'm just saying, that's the Anthony that
all right. Appreciate it, Anthony. All right, don't go anywhere. Dan Rubenstein from The Solid Verbal will join us. He'll let us know his thoughts on this Big Ten pecking order now that we're 3 weeks into the season. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Talkin Ducks. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. We're now joined by our great friend Dan Rubenstein from the Solid Verbal podcast. And Dan, we're now a handful of weeks into this college football season and this new life of the Big Ten for Oregon. And what were your Big Ten takeaways last week? Because you had a nice little matchup with Michigan, USC. We saw Purdue fall to Oregon State. What have we learned about this conference this year from your perspective?
Ohio State is likely the only truly excellent team, and I say likely because they haven't played anybody. There was a slow start against Marshall this week, and then it wasn't. And what they've done, Penn State struggled a little bit with Bowling Green, which I guess Texas A&M struggled with Bowling Green. They're a tough team in the MAC, but in terms of what Oregon has in front of it and what the Big Ten looks like, Michigan with some offensive or like passing ineptitude, we'll say, and it's going to be tough to win the conference for Michigan if they can't run a varied offense on some level. USC was new USC until they weren't, and Oregon doesn't play SC this year, but those tackling issues in the back end and some of those decisions on both sides of the ball near the end of the game would have me worried as a USC fan in terms of like what their high-level ceiling is if they can't finish out a tough game on the road like that. And, of course, Oregon is a wild card at the top just because I think we know more about what they can be along the offensive line with what they showed against Oregon State. But with what Oregon State is offering up front, it's not apples to apples with what they'll see at times at the top of the conference. And so, Iowa's interesting. They can't throw the ball. There's a lot of teams that you can sort of say that about. Washington, I think, is feisty, but they still have a lot of work to do on defense and, proving that they can beat quality teams consistently. So it's an up in the air conference, but I think we can all agree that Indiana's going to run away with it.
And then you look at UCLA, a little up and down. They looked very questionable to start this season, but then honestly, a very valiant performance on the road at LSU. Not only is it an SEC team, it's the elements. That 2:30 kickoff had a lot of people in the stands wilting away. It feels like this is somewhat of a pesky UCLA team.
I think so. I think the best of UCLA with some of the offensive skill talent is interesting. I still don't know if I trust those lines. And we saw, you talk about people in the stands wilting away. UCLA kind of wilted away in that second half. They didn't score at all. And I think a lot of teams are going to struggle in the SEC and beyond with what LSU has to offer at receiver and the speed that they have on offense. Caden Durham is the freshman running back who has stepped into the scene nicely. But yeah, it's going to be that question for UCLA, especially on defense, of getting to the quarterback. They did a great job of it last year with Latu, and they don't have that type of guy this year on defense. They're decent players. There are guys there, but it's for 4 quarters against a talented team. We saw, Oregon State throw a nice punch at Oregon, at least early on, staying on the field on offense, but it's the whole like Oregon, what's the score at halftime 0-0, and then they run away with it in the second half. And so, yeah, I think UCLA has guys that can play with a lot of teams for a couple quarters. LSU's defense still has a ways to go, to be clear. But yeah, UCLA, I think, can be pesky for a stretch, but I don't think they're built to do it for 4 quarters.
All right, so this Oregon team taking on UCLA, what are you looking to see from Oregon as far as where they take the next step until they can start kind of solving some of those questions many people have about this team?
Getting off the field. I said this to you last season. I want to see the back of Oregon's jerseys. And we saw that be a little bit of a struggle in that first half against Oregon State. On defense, it's on 3rd and 7, keep the play in front of you and force a 3rd and 3. Or I know Oregon now leads the nation, I believe, in passes defended, or at least they did after the Beaver game. It's make those plays on 3rd down, because if the offense is rolling like they did against Oregon State in the Rose Bowl at God knows what time kickoff is for people on the East Coast, they're going to be in great shape. They're going to be in very strong shape. If they start out playing with energy and coming after a bye, I would expect this defense to be in even better shape with fresher legs, and the offense, as Dillon Gabriel, we saw he looked just sharper. He looked more confident against Oregon State as that game went on, going downfield more, felt more confident in his protection with the new look offensive line, with Poncho sliding in at center and Nishad Strother and Marcus Harper at guards entrenched there. Like I would look for confidence and comfort from Oregon moving forward.
Yeah, I think the last thing is it's easy to obviously highlight some of Oregon's deficiencies, and those have been clear as day in their games, but you look at what they've done, and Boise State is ranked in the top 25. We just saw Oregon State manhandle Purdue, a Big Ten opponent. It feels like Oregon, for as hard as we've been on them, at least on this show for the first couple of weeks because of the demands on this team and the expectations, there are a lot of positives about this team that have kind of gotten overshadowed by just some of the offensive line player not being able to get off the field.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that outside of Terrence Ferguson, each of the offensive skill guys are being counted on to be the guy for Oregon for the first time, whether it's Evan Stewart, whether it's Jordan James, whether it's the guys, I think center is a crazy important position, seeing what Jackson Powers Johnson was able to do these past few years, that Poncho is the guy on that offensive line. We've seen if center isn't there, the line isn't there. And so obviously Dillon Gabriel, first time as the guy for this Oregon Ducks team. So I think it's important to remember that they're going to progress with comfort and time. They're going to become more confident. And I mean, that'd be another thing I would look for too, is Dillon Gabriel's not just confidence in going downfield, but confidence in taking shots. Because I think they're these Oregon weapons at their best, outside of, the DBs for Michigan and Ohio State, like they should be running past everybody. And so if Dillon Gabriel in stride, I know he's not known for having the biggest arm, but if he sees something early downfield, taking those shots, I think they're going to be there this year.
Well, Dan, you are that guy. Remind everybody where they can catch you.
Sure. Solidverbal.com. It's the Solid Verbal podcast, like a solid verbal, like a recruit gives. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, easiest way is just Google Solid Verbal, and there we'll be.
All right. Appreciate it, Dan. You have a good one. Stick around when we come back on Talkin Ducks. Plenty more to get to. We'll give you our thoughts about Oregon versus UCLA as the Ducks get set for their first Big Ten matchup of the season. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks, and you see the career numbers between Dillon Gabriel and Joey Harrington. And well, listen, Joey was a different era when you played, let's say that, and Dillon Gabriel has got nearly twice as many games as you. He still has about 11 games left, but you're never one to talk about yourself, advocate for yourself. That's why we love you so much, Joey. So Aaron, please explain to us just how good Joey Harrington would have been if he was playing in today's modern game of NIL, 3 square meals, water treadmills, multiple uniforms, Nike Hyper Max Vapor cleats with double the air in them. How would Joey Harrington stack them in today's game?
Well, I think the NIL might have ruined Joey. I think Joey had been showing up to the facility with diamond earrings and gold chains and just walking around like he owned the place.
They could buy better beds now,
He wouldn't have
Aaron.
been the same. He just wouldn't have been the same. No, in 2013, when we were talking about if Marcus was the greatest ever, I threw out the idea that I don't know yet, because at that point he hadn't won the Heisman, obviously he hadn't won the conference title yet. And I made the point that if you put Joey Harrington in a spread no huddle system where he's going to get more pass attempts, more reps, and you're spreading teams out with Parker and Howery and Peel, and you got those 2 wicked running backs to work with, that he puts up some crazy numbers. He doesn't throw for 20-something touchdowns. He throws for 38 to 40 or what have you touchdowns. And then Joey kind of argued back and said, well, that's one of my favorite Talkin Ducks moments ever, was arguing with Joey Harrington about Joey Harrington and basically telling Joey Harrington he knew nothing about Joey Harrington. That said, no, I think,
wasn't Joey arguing against Joey? Isn't that how it worked?
I don't know.
Yeah, you were arguing
You
against
were pro
yourself.
Joey.
You were
and I
arguing
was
for Marcus.
anti-Joey.
I was arguing for you.
Yeah.
We got to find that clip. It's gold. Anyway, no, I mean, it's the game has just changed so much in so many different ways for the college quarterback, where they can do so many different things with the quick passing game, and you can take advantage of mismatches much better than you can really in the NFL. And when you put a quarterback that has accuracy, that has intelligence and weapons, they're going to put up massive numbers. But Joey played in more of a West Coast style offense where they actually huddled. I mean, come on, right there, they huddle. There's the difference. That's why he has 800 something passing attempts in his career, and Gabriel's already at 1,700 with 9, 10, 11 games to go. So yeah, I think Joey Harrington with those guys on offense in a no huddle spread system would have put up pretty amazing numbers.
Yeah, it's also interesting that for the second year in a row, Oregon has the quarterback in college with the most career starts. When you look at Bo Nix last year as well, too. So plenty of experience there. But, Joey, you look at Dillon Gabriel, an impressive body of work in the past, and that's why people were very hyped about him coming to Oregon. His numbers have been very good. The blowouts haven't been there for Oregon, but what do you want to see from Dillon specifically against UCLA? Because we just had a chance to hear from Dan Rubenstein. He talked about airing it out a little bit more. What do you think Dillon Gabriel needs to continue to show in his comfort levels, maturation as the Oregon quarterback?
I think the way he played against Oregon State was as good as you could hope for, right? In those first couple games, completed 84% of his passes against Idaho. A lot of quick balls, couple fades up the sideline, and we talked about it in last week's show. Like, there really wasn't a whole lot of action across the middle of the field. That mid-range, 10 to 20 yard routes, over the middle. Did that very well against Oregon State. Did a really nice job of taking some easy 10, 12 yard completions. Those are the kind of things that are going to open everything up. When it's just quick screens and fades, it's hard to, it didn't make a whole lot of room for the running game. Work in the middle of the field, working it efficiently, seeing when you can break contain, seeing when you can take an option for 50 yards for a touchdown. Like, those are the things that keep defenses on their heels and allow this offense to be at its best, and that's what he did against Oregon State. One thing, while Aaron was talking a second ago, I divided Dillon's attempts by my attempts, right? Like, okay, like how does this actually work? It's like exactly. And if you multiply, so how do I do that? So
oh gosh,
let's do
Joey's
quick math
doing
here.
math, ladies and gentlemen.
We're doing math.
Stick to doodles with Joey. That's
Doodles
where
with
you
Joey,
excel.
ready?
Doodles with
1129 divided by 445 equals 2.53. Okay, right? So 2.53 times, how many yards did I throw for? 2.53.
You're putting everybody to sleep, man.
There we go. Hold on. Times 60, 50, 15,350 passing yards. So pretty much about the same. Do it for touchdown passes. Okay. Literally the exact same number. Like, it's crazy how close those two stat lines are. Like you said, Aaron, if you adjust for just chucking the heck out of the ball. And that's what he's been able to do for so long and do it for so well over 5+ years now.
Joey, I got a question though, Joey.
Yep.
So if my defense was going to play against you, my question is this, and I don't know, I'm just being honest. Can you take it 60?
No, I got caught by a D lineman. I ran speed. I was telling somebody this weekend about how we were running speed option, because we ran speed option a bunch on the goal line.
Yeah.
Because it was just quick, make a decision and get your head in. We ran speed option in the middle of the field, and I turned the corner and I was like, oh my God, there's nobody here. And so I'm running and I'm looking around like someone's got to catch me. And I look back over my shoulder and one of the Washington D linemen was like on my heels. I was like, okay, I'm about to get hawked by a D lineman, so I'm just going to go down. And so, Larry Triplett got me after like 20, 25 years. So no, I cannot take it 60.
Okay. So that's not.
No, and we also saw in the Holiday Bowl, like,
you can take it
once you start
16
running
though.
more than 20 yards,
16
anyway, Joey.
Hey, Anthony, in the words of you played with Ironhead, didn't you, Craig?
Yeah.
And what did he say, Coach? If you need 3, I'll get you 4.
That's
Coach,
right.
if you need 5, I'll get you 4. Like, I can get you. I'll get you 16. Hey, but I ain't going past that.
And welcome back to Talkin Ducks, and we promised you we'd talk about this Oregon defense against UCLA. We've already talked circles around it for the most part here, but Anthony, real quick, just your snapshot as far as what this Oregon defense needs to do against UCLA to continue to show you more confidence on that side of the ball.
Well, the quarterback's throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, 4 picks, and they've given up 8 sacks. So it's real simple. Blitz the quarterback. We call it all out. Just send the house. Every linebacker's coming. Man to man, period. End of story. Let's get some sacks.
Wait, is that how the quarterback is afterwards? Is that what that was?
Hey, we're bringing the house, baby. We're bringing the house.
I love it. Let's go ahead and shift gears, though, because we've got to talk about Bo Nix here, Aaron. And Bo Nix, many people, they weren't sure if he was going to be starting in Denver this year, coming into this NFL draft. They weren't sure if he's going to be a first-round draft pick, but he's clearly the man for Denver, and he got his first win of his NFL career on the road against the 2-0 Buccaneers and showed you a little bit of what he could do with his arms and his legs. And to me, Aaron, he looked very, very impressive and has shown growth game after game already, just his 3rd game into the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he is showing growth, but he still doesn't have a touchdown pass. He does have a touchdown run. Look at his numbers, right? 2 touchdown runs, 4 interceptions, but none this past week. I mean, come on, we gotta give the Denver defense most of the credit for that win. But Bo Nix went into a hostile environment against a good team, didn't turn it over, right? Converted a lot of 3rd downs, did some things with his legs. So yeah, it was a step in the right direction. But he's got a long ways to go. As do most rookie quarterbacks when they first start out, especially after 3 games. I'm a Bears fan, and Caleb Williams, I'm watching him go through it, man. He's going through it right now, and Bo has as well. But yeah, the thing about Bo that we know is that I don't think he's going to be a quarterback, even in the NFL, where he just kills you. The question is, can he be a quarterback where he elevates you, right? Where he can win games by throwing for 325 and 4 touchdowns if needed. That's going to be really what I'm watching for, because I don't believe he's going to be a turnover machine. He's too smart for that. But so far, he's looked solid through 3 games.
Joey.
I think of Ben Roethlisberger's rookie year when they played him, right? They weren't throwing the ball, but I think he only threw the ball more than 20 times in a game once that season. And not that they have to do that with Bo, but what it did is it didn't put him into those situations where he was forced into making mistakes, right? That's what killed him the first couple weeks. Four interceptions, right? Without a touchdown pass. Like, if he can settle into this role of doing things efficiently, like you said, Aaron, still no touchdown passes, but what was, completed 70% of his passes, 220-ish yards, had a rushing touchdown. Like, that's the type of stuff that you can build on. And that's what being a rookie is about establishing a foundation and saying, okay, I can do this, right? I belong here. I'm not trying to keep my head above water anymore. Now I can build on something. And that's why I think that Bo and Sean Payton, I think that could be a fantastic relationship so long as Bo continues to play the way that he did this last week.
All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll give you our thoughts and predictions. Oregon versus UCLA. Final score thoughts on that one as well, too, as we wrap up shop on this edition of Talkin Ducks. And welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Let's set the stage for this matchup against UCLA. A couple of numbers for you. Oregon favored by 24.5 points on the road at UCLA. 8 p.m. Pacific time kickoff, 11 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. So, yeah, get ready. Have that second cup of coffee to watch some football through the wee hours of the night. But let's get to some score predictions here, because that's what everybody cares about at the end of the day here. Aaron, let's start with you. What do you got this one looking like?
I think Oregon learned a lot of things about itself in the first 3 games, and they showed a lot in the second half, especially against that Oregon State team. Having a week off to really fine-tune some details on offense and defense, going up against a mediocre UCLA team with a bad offense. I'm going to go 52-22 Ducks. I think they dominate from the start to the finish. I think Dante Moore either rushes or throws a touchdown pass. That's how much time he's going to get at the end of this debacle. So I think the Ducks are going to make good on their bye week and throttle the Bruins.
Joey.
52-17.
35-point victory. I like it. Anthony.
Whoa. I think Oregon wins by 17. I think there's just too many guys, too many dudes. UCLA,
17?
That's it?
By 17.
What? I thought you said 70.
So not covering the spread.
What's that? No.
So not covering the spread, huh?
No.
Hater!
No. Okay.
I can't wait to see the comments on I can't wait to see the comments on the YouTube this week. They better be trashing you.
I'm just being real.
Okay.
All right. I got Oregon 45-17 in this one. I think the Ducks continue to roll. I think they've found their mojo. I think they found something that works with that offensive line rotation, and just finally guys settling into their roles for the most part. But Big Ten play does start for Oregon. It's a familiar foe in UCLA as they get set to take the show on the road. From all of us here, thanks again for joining us. We'll break down that game, set the stage for the next one on next week's edition of Talkin Ducks. As always, we appreciate the support, and we'll see you then.
17, come on.